Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're finally going to be discussing the day I left basic military training. But before we get into my story time, let's cover some basics. My name is Michael Inman and I'm an airman in the United States Air Force. If you like military or Air Force content, I upload a video every Monday. So definitely hit the subscribe button below and make sure you turn the notification bell to on so you know when I upload a brand new video. Let's jump into the story. Now, I don't know if you're following me, everyone, but where was I? Oh yes, I woke up into a half-empty room. So, last week we definitely discussed kind of the last night in basic military training, and to continue the story, right now we're discussing me waking up in my barracks with half of my flight gone because they had already left for the place we go when it's your time to say bon voyage. So I woke up, let's say, at a normal 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. And as I've stated, half of the flight had already had their call time earlier in the morning. So they had been woken up either by the entry controllers, who walk up to your bed and tap you and say, yo homie, you gotta go. Or now that we had access to our phones and or laptops and or just smartwatches, a lot of people knew what alarms were. And so you would just set your alarm to wake up at the proper time. So after I woke up at a reasonable time, I probably had a good 45 minutes to pack because it just so happened that my group was next. So people with my job and a couple other jobs, we were in the next slot in which it was our time to roll out of the dormitory. If you're following, say goodbye, leave BMT. All of the things. So I got dressed. Luckily, I had already pre-packed and placed my bags in like a logical place. And so after, you did the brush your teeth and wash your face one last time, it was very convenient for me to put on my outfit that I had already predetermined, my uniform. And I had already packed my bags to the brim. And luckily, my bags made sense. So don't bring a suitcase to BMT. For the sole fact of when you have your big green duffel bag and your book bag in front of you, duffel bag on the back, book bag on the front, you don't want to then have a huge suitcase, especially one with bad wheels or no wheels. Don't do it. Because your trip to your final destination before you then get taken to the airport will just be a hot mess, sad, raggedy situation. Don't let it be you. Luckily, I had brought a weekender, which is a type of bag that is convenient for weekend trips. Get it? So I had brought a weekender bag to basic training. So when I had that puppy taken out of the closet in the barracks, I was like, perfect. So the game plan is duffel bag, book bag, weekender. You see, it worked out. So anywho, I grabbed my bags and then I ventured downstairs with everyone else leaving at that time. I think there were about 8 to 10 of us total. And so we left the barracks. We of course gave a pageant wave to all of our brethren that we were leaving behind, the stragglers who were leaving last. So we said a final goodbye to those people. We also gave a very, very, big thank you to the entry controllers since they had to do that sucky job that last night of basic training. We went downstairs and then we lined all of our bags up in these lines underneath our barracks because that's just was where we were supposed to put them. That's where we were told to put them, and that may be where you're told to put them. So you made your bags go to a spot that made sense that was in one of the many lines. And then you and anyone else who needed to get to the, departure location during this time block, all of us from our specific squadron were eating breakfast at this time. So just think of it as a wake up at 5:45, breakfast time is at 6:30. So all of us that are supposed to show up at the, other place in an hour, well, more like in 30, 40 minutes. All of us had, come down from our different flight dormitory or barracks, landed at the DFAC and entered. So what was interesting is even though everyone around you is not necessarily in your flight, is not necessarily in your specific job, you do know that these are the people traveling around the same time as you. So one, I might see them around in the airport. Two, it's cool because I've seen them in passing since they were, in your same squadrons. You saw these people in passing, but most importantly, you're doing the guessing game of, okay, which of these people have my job? Because then, oh my God, we might be future friends. Who knows? I don't know. The possibilities are endless. After you have your final BMT breakfast, good riddance. That is when you exit the defect, you grab your bags from that line that you put your bags in, and you pretty much start meandering across the entire base of Lackland Air Force Base. It's not quite the entire base, but the walk isn't short. If you were in, if you were in Alcatraz, you have quite a hike with all of your bags. You have quite the hike to a place called the Finkston Reception Center, or the PRC. You've probably heard about it in my other videos, but just know, you have quite a hike to get where you're trying to go for what comes next in the leaving BMT pipeline situation. It's going to feel like a mass exodus. There will be a sea of people with more things, on their persons than you really think should be appropriate or necessary. But that's just the way it is. So you start your ruck, and I don't ruck, I'm in the Air Force. So after about 15 minutes of glorious hiking, you do arrive at the PRC, and long and behold, you get to put your stuff in another line of bags. But this time, if my memory serves me correctly, there are these signs. So I don't know if they were in orange cones or just signs that were just standing, somehow. Physics? I don't know. The point is there are signs, and each of the signs has jobs on them. Either jobs or airport, either job, the airport you're going to, or it was maybe the base you're heading to. So if there's multiple jobs going to Keesler, for example, it would just say Keesler, and no matter what your job was, you knew to put your bags behind that sign in a nice line that just went on forever. Because it doesn't really matter quite yet what job you have in that regard. It just means your stuff needs to be there so that it can go on the proper transportation vehicle. You drop your stuff off in the line that syncs up with where the heck you're going for tech school, everyone. And then you are all herded into the auditorium of the PRC for your final out brief. That's not quite what this is, nor what that means once you get more into the Air Force, everyone. But just know that sounded like it made sense, right? It's your final brief for leaving. When you actually get into the auditorium, again, after being herded in there, because you're slightly unsure what's going on the whole time, but eventually you put your stuff down, they're go inside, and you're oh my God, what's going on? But once you get into the auditorium, even though it's not a very exciting brief, you do start getting excited, everyone, because you just start feeling this buzz of oh shoot. It feels like a 1/10 version of I'm going to college. Kind of. Kind of. It's like when you go into an auditorium for accepted students week at a community college or a four-year college or university, whatever you want to call it or consider. The point is, when you go for or whether it's when you went, or you can imagine if you go to an accepted students weekend and you're in the auditorium for the intro thing, it kind of feels like that, because there's this buzz of oh shoot, what's gonna happen next? Where are we going? What's tech school gonna be like? Who's gonna be my clique? Who are my friends gonna be? What shenanigans am I gonna get into? So you're starting to feel it a bit. So we sat through the presentation, again, not that exciting, but they told you about please keep a wingman beside you, don't get lost in an airport, don't get arrested in an airport, don't die in said airport. And then of course was P.S. you also get a meal voucher or two, so you're welcome. And at the end of said brief, they say, okay, everyone, put your hands in, break. So then you all leave said auditorium, and it is the auditorium that you initially filed into your first night of basic training. We love a full circle. Come on now. So you exit from said auditorium, you go back to your bag because a part of your brain is saying, I don't know how it's possible, but if my bag is the only one missing, I'm gonna fight someone. I don't know who I'm gonna fight, but I'm gonna fight everyone. Everyone, every single person. You kind of rush back to the line that has your bag in it just to see that your bag is safe and sound. We're not gonna mention that like everyone has a duffel bag, so really it was kind of a funny situation. You kind of had to feel out. For anyone who doesn't have a good sense of direction and like, I don't know, a sense of where you leave things, like a car in a parking lot, things like that, you must have been confused, and you will be confused, because you're just gonna see this never-ending line of green duffel bags, and you have to use your spider senses to be like, mine is this way. So you go back to your bag, and at this point, it's the waiting game. Hopefully it's not too cold, but if not, you have your very aesthetically pleasing, very attractive, like waterproof, rain-resistant outer gear for your uniform. Is not that attractive. It's not aesthetically pleasing, but it does the job. So hopefully you are wearing that if it's a rainy day, and you're just waiting, because during the brief you would have been told buses are coming. Buses may be outside, and you walk outside and there are no buses. So you're like, now what? Now what do I do? And all of you just start sitting on your duffel bag. Imagine this, there's just a line of bags on the ground because there's no benches anywhere. There's no benches anywhere, and y'all are just sitting on your duffel bag like it's a log stump, just waiting for, like you're just waiting in the desert for a bus to come out of nowhere and save you. After about 10 to 15 minutes, the buses do arrive in like a cavalry, like a convoy. It's amazing. They just roll in deep. And you're like, oh my God, it's happening. You can kind of see that, like, let's say 7 buses fit across the width of the PRC cemented area. You can see that the buses keep going. Like, you can tell, and you'll start to see that when one bus fills up, it drives off. Well, actually, that doesn't quite make sense because, it's not gonna have each bus scooting up a bit while people are trying to get on. But you recognize if your bus has not pulled up yet, you do clearly see a pattern of like all 7, signal that they're ready. They all leave, and another 7 come out of nowhere. This is a system. It is smooth, clean, professional, other than them being late. You eventually wait for your line's turn to start boarding, and then after that process starts, you then wait for your spot in line to be near the front enough to get on. Now, that's kind of how it works in a beautiful way of describing it, but really, if I'm being transparent with you, it's more like people generally are estimating if they're in the group of 30 that are getting on the bus next, those 30 pick up their bags or like walk chaotically towards said bus that they kind of signal that they're getting on. It's not even that clean that like, hey, this is like the bus you all will need to go to. It feels, at least from the back where I was standing, maybe I didn't see some details, but it just felt, from where I was, it seemed as though the kids rolled up and said, this is our bus, and you're taking this group to X location. Thank you. That's probably not how that went. But it is slightly chaotic because it becomes very much a group project of like, okay, everyone, we need to get all of our individual bags onto this bus. You don't need to have your bags near you like where you're sitting. No. Logistically, that won't work. We need to pile all of our bags in any spot that makes sense in the back of the bus. So like people are going to the front, the people who think they strong, and people are just lifting. We're making like a conveyor belt. Is that right? We're making like a assembly line. That sounds right. We're making like some kind of line, let's say assembly line. We're throwing things in the bus. There's people in the bus who are doing more of the assembling objects, as Vab reference. They're doing more of the like Tetris situation, actually in the back of the bus, being like, this goes here, this goes here. And then the rest of us who volunteered, we're just passing things like this. That's how this goes. It's kind of chaotic. It's kind of manual labor, but you're just like very excited to be going to the next step in your pipeline. It's very exciting. So eventually all of our stuff got into the back of the bus. Then we were like, whew, let's get in the front of the bus. That is when the bus rolled off, because it was finally our buses and the buses that had loaded up at the same time, let's say 7 buses. It was finally time for all 7 buses to leave. They had all signaled they were good. All of our stuff was on the bus. And before you know it, we started moving. And that is when we started heading toward the airport. Most of us, meaning most of the buses that were in my field of vision, we were all generally heading to the same airport, but there are other airports other than the main one in Lackland. So it really just depended on what your final destination was. That is how BMT ended. That is what will, something like that, something like that will happen on your final day, and you will be, herded to your next location. It is time for tech school. And in closing, everyone, I have really enjoyed this era. We love BMT. BMT was great. Thank you all for sticking with me through all of this fun times. If you have not subscribed yet, you know my rule. If you've watched more than 2 videos, you should subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely post any questions you have in the comment section. I, of course, will get back to you. If you want to see any more of this space, I'm available on Instagram and Twitter at @MichaelAInman_. I wish you a great rest of your week, and until next week, bye.